Good afternoon, folks. This is Talk with John. As you can see, yeah, that way. It's a mirror image, John. Shame on you. You should have known that. Uh, so, folks, this is Talk with John. I am your host, John. Looking forward to being with you for the next 2 hours. I've got a great guest. We're going to cover a lot of ground, and I am really looking forward to being with him. I've been looking forward to this interview for several weeks now, and I bet you guys are going to be excited for it too. But first, let's get this show off to a proper start. And really kind of the whole reason for doing this show. I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra: where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. Folks, that is the show mantra. So, as you know, I have great guests, and this Michael Letts is, if not the greatest one I've ever had. He's an excellent guest, and I sure like him being here. Michael, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you, John. You're much too kind, but I appreciate the nice words, and I appreciate more the fact that it's shows like this that are attempting to make sure the American public knows the truth. I believe that's what the country desires, is to know the truth, because the truth will set you free. What we do with the truth is up to us, but at least we're going to make sure that we know it is out there and people understand what's going on.
Well, that is why I bring on the people that I do, because I think that they seek for the truth. I do have my guests, a number of my guests do think slightly differently. I would say that they probably agree on anywhere between 70 to, probably you and my guests that would disagree with you the most. You guys probably agree on 70%. Um, there's other guests that I have on that would probably agree with you 95%, if not more. So, and as I've said to the audience before, and let me mention that. So, folks, you are watching Talk with John on KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. You can go to kmmu.org or mainstreetmediautah.com. And if you click up on the top where the buttons for Twitter, for YouTube, and for Rumble are, you can find the shows and past shows as well. So pass it along. This is going to be a barn burner today. It'll be interesting. I really want, like I said, Michael Letts' thoughts on a number of things, especially in Iran, and here's some domestic thoughts. But before we get going, Michael, since you are a chaplain. Oh, folks, you know what? Another thing, shame on me. Michael, I apologize for doing this. Let me do a little bit better job of introducing you, because the bottom line is, folks, I just figure everybody knows him, but I'm reminded often that I've got new viewers and listeners, now viewers that were on the web every week. So Michael Letts is a Christian husband, founder, president, CEO of Invest USA, a nonprofit organization that's providing thousands of bulletproof vests for law enforcement officers and first responders. If I remember correctly, the number was 17,000 active shooter vests. So we appreciate you doing that. So, Chaplain Michael Letts, would you please say a prayer for us and get us off started on the right footing?
I sure will. Father, we thank you for this opportunity that we have to be able to discuss the issues that affect us, this country, and the future. And most importantly, we ask for your wisdom, discernment, and for your guidance for our country. We are at a crossroads. May we recognize that only righteousness and only your wisdom will guide us to the right path. Give us wisdom in the days ahead. Protect our soldiers. Protect those who protect us. We ask all this in Christ's sake. Amen.
Amen. All right. One thing that I am grateful for is Easter. I want to mention this real quickly. If I remember correctly, my grandmother, my dad's mom, passed away. I want to say it's about 3-4 years ago now. And many years before that, I remember talking with my maternal grandparents, my grandma, my mom's parents, and then her. We were all at dinner at my house, and I remember talking about Christmas and Easter, and my grandma Twitchell said Easter was a bigger deal than Christmas when she was a child. And basically, it didn't become a bigger deal until after World War II. And to me, please do not take this as sacrilege, folks, but Christmas, while it is wonderful and it points to his life, it would have been all for naught had he not died on the cross and been able to take up and rise again, and which allows us to be his. He can that fulfilled everything. So the promise of his birth pointed to his death, and he did something miraculous, and that is live a life without sin. That's amazing. And then he rose again, and so he gets to, long as we ask for his grace and we ask for the Lord Jesus Christ to be our Lord and Savior and the King of this land. That's another thing I want to point out. Everything is all for naught. And so, good Christian brother that you are, bottom line, he's risen. So the next step is, am I going to be on his team or not? And that's what we're here to talk about now, is get the truth. You are absolutely correct. I am on a pursuit of truth and trying to figure it out, and I don't figure it out all the time. I'm on that path, and that's why I've got you here, Michael Letts, is to help us get there. So
I'm so glad that you started it off that way, because as you said, Easter is our redemption. Without redemption, we'd spend an eternity apart from God, and that's not where we want to be.
Definitely don't want to be in that dark abyss, I would say. Okay, so folks, I've got a number of talking points, both domestically and internationally, so I want to hit that. And so if you don't mind, I want to save our international points for later in the conversation.
Sure.
And so let's start off with one of those being, and I'm not assuming that you've heard about this specific issue. It's the last point. ICE is going to have a detention center in Salt Lake City. Now, if ICE had come to talk with John and said, talk with John, what's your opinion of, we want to put a big building in Utah for a detention center. I want to say it could hold up to 10,000 people. I'd be like, amen, brother, bring it in. And I'd say, don't put it in Salt Lake County, Utah, especially in Salt Lake City, where they wound up purchasing some ground. I want to say somewhere in the neighborhood of $80 to $100 million. I would have said, buy that in Utah County would have been my suggestion, a much more friendly area, because you've got the Democrat. So there's a county mayor of Salt Lake County, and Salt Lake City mayor, the mayor of Salt Lake City, is extremely leftist Democrat, and you've got all the Democrats that are good little Democrats out there fighting for ICE to not to catch anyone, and to make sure all the murderers and the rapists and stuff are out in their communities. Now, the great thing is those two individuals get to have police protection, sheriff protection, and get a protective detail. So, of course, those are not issues for them. Little people can deal with that, right? So that's one thing that I wanted to start off there. Any thoughts? To me, it's just, asinine that these people would fight against, especially what Tom Holman's going after now.
John, one of the things we've discussed within Homeland Security, sometimes the best defense is a better offense. And sometimes it's better to go to where you're not wanted instead of trying to avoid those situations because it causes the ability for confrontation. Sometimes we think confrontation is bad, sometimes it's good. Sometimes people need to see what we're really all about, what we're really doing, so that they begin to understand the error of the propaganda that they're believing and that they're promoting. And so that is why you will see ICE go into situations where they're really not welcome. They had another option, they could have moved to a different location, but we chose to go there for a reason, and that's because we believe our message is the right message for America.
Well, and then I'm going to say I'm not very impressed with our governor. I think he's been really, 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 did I say really weak about, I said really many times, right? Pathetic little weasel that he is. A good little rhino, good little Democrat in Republican skin, or at least he tries to put it on. It took him quite a while to come out and say, yes, I'm glad they're here. Um,
Well,
he doesn't do anything until he knows which way the political winds are blowing.
he's fixing to be more glad, and here's the reason why I say that is because we are fine tuning and fixing to implement our programs on things that the American public are not aware of yet. First of all, one of your questions, yes, we're going to keep more ICE agents at the airports, even if DHS is fully funded. Because here's one of the things that we've noticed. You notice we've sealed the borders, especially the southern borders. 0% of crossings now on the southern borders. But yet we're finding more and more illegal immigrants are attempting to come in through air transportation, i.e. the airports. And so you remember we just did an experiment to help TSA. Now, of course, we're funding them through executive order. Not the way they're supposed to be, but at least it's helping to relieve the 4 and 5 hour waits that you see at the airports. But we put in ICE agents in there to do twofold. First and foremost, they're ICE agents, so they're supposed to be enforcing immigration. And second of all, they were to take over security for gates, doors, etc., to free up some of the TSA agents to do screening. What we discovered was there were quite a few illegal immigrants attempting to come in through those methods, and our pickup of illegal immigrants rose substantially just in that short period of time we were there at the airport. You say, why was it a short period of time? We were attempting to relieve the pressure on TSA, as much as we want to continue to do that. The ICE agents have a very critical role in being out on the street and bringing criminal illegal immigrants to justice. So we knew it was a temporary basis. We've now tested it, and then we now know that we're going to leave a lot more officers in the airports, bring on additional officers and put them back in the street. But it was I have to thank the Democrats. Thank you for your stupidity in not funding DHS, because you helped us realize that we need more ICE agents in the airports. The second thing that's fixing to come out that nobody is talking about because it's not been made public yet, but Mike is the new secretary for Homeland Security. Mike is taking a very interesting position. I think his position is right. That if you have an international airport in your city, state, and you are a sanctuary city or state, that's an oxymoron. We can't allow people from all across the country to go through customs and border and immigration in the airport and then step out onto the street when they leave the airport doors into an area that disregards immigration law. So we're going to pull the funding and pull the designation of international airports from any airport that's located in the area that has sanctuary cities or a sanctuary state. Now that's going to hurt an awful lot money-wise and reputation-wise. Let's just take Vegas. Imagine all the foreigners that come to Vegas and want to get there to that airport. If you take away that designation that international flights can't fly to Vegas anymore, imagine what it'll do. to the economy of that city. That is what they're fixing to face now. And they don't realize it. You see, there are consequences to your actions, John. You want to act like, oh, I'm going to make a political statement and I'm not going to let illegals be picked up in my city, in my state. I'm going to protect them. Okay. First of all, you're violating federal law. But second of all, if you're going to violate federal law, there's a consequence in doing that. A consequence in your receiving federal aid to your city, to your state, consequence in receiving federal assistance. And in the past, we've just simply ignored it. We've just kind of said, well, if you don't want to play ball with us, that's fine. We'll continue to fund your bill anyway, but you don't have to play ball with us. We now have an administration that says, no, if you don't want to play ball, you will suffer the full consequences of what that means. And they're fixing to really find out how difficult life's going to get when they decide they want to violate federal law.
Well, I would say also another thing is, well, let me use this story, not the story, a national story. Just recently that was played. I can't remember on which one of the networks, where a mother was detained, an illegal alien mother was detained, and her daughter was there in front of her. And I can't remember if it was a little girl or if it was, like a teenage or just an adult daughter. But they were like, "This is terrible. You can't detain my mother. You can't do this." I'm like, actually, this is a wonderful thing. I don't want just the nation to see it. I want the whole world to see it. You come in here illegally, you go about breaking the law to get into our country. You will be detained and you will be dealt with. We're going to get into the activist judges that are doing everything they can. I am concerned about the Supreme Court and birthright citizenship. I'm quite concerned about that, and but I was very happy to see ICE being brought into it. Made total sense to me from the very beginning. I'm like, why didn't we think of this sooner? Why wasn't this done sooner? And I guarantee you the Democrats aren't going to like it. So off a couple of points from that, I do want to get into your thoughts on privatizing the TSA, making the airlines themselves responsible. Let's just get rid of the TSA, and let's privatize that whole process. Never been a fan of the TSA. I think it's a terrible idea. As far as from the standpoint, it's being done horribly, and I think it could be done much better by the airlines themselves. And then along, and this was all done by the Democrats trying to shut down and cause the American public as much pain as possible. Bottom line, one law that I think, if I was Donald Trump, I would have proposed in the my message to the nation. I would have said, and I'd probably just go on national TV and say, this government shutdown is ridiculous. So this is what I propose. It's Congress that decides, the Congress and the Senate that decides this. So this is what we need to do. We need to when Congress decides to shut down the government. Congress should no longer receive fund. The congressional and senatorial members themselves, not only they should receive no funding, their staffs should not have any funding, and any security, and maybe even go as far as saying Capitol Police should not be funded. Now, what really does happen is eventually the police and so forth would get back pay and so forth, if they continue to work. So the bottom line is, I would love to see that happen, and I guarantee you the Democrats wouldn't work very long for free.
Well, I would love to see it happen, but we actually attempt to make that happen, John. And this last time, both in the House and the Senate, there was legislation proposed by Republicans to forfeit their pay and their staff's pay. Two separate bills. One was just to figure the least we could do is forfeit ours. You could control that. I realize you get upset about, can my staff person, do they deserve the right to suffer, et cetera? But we'll do that as a separate issue. I must tell you that both of them didn't even get out of committee. There were Republicans that voted against it as well.
Against the bill.
Against the bill. They never even got a chance to get it on the floor. That just goes to show you, and I have said this repeatedly for the last 2 weeks, we have a totally inept corrupt Congress, and we need to start over. All of them. We need to start over. You say, well, there's some good ones. I'm sorry. I will not dispute that state. There probably are. But we have an overwhelming majority that are not. And they are there for one reason. And their consequences are becoming very obvious to the American people. We take a look at the airline wreck at LaGuardia a couple weeks ago. What happened there? It appears to be the air traffic controller. We'll follow the timeline, John. We had a budget that we couldn't get past the first of last year, as you recall, 43 days. Air traffic controllers, many of them had to quit and leave because they couldn't afford it. And, air traffic controller is not somebody you can just grab off the street and say, here, I need you to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning and start work. It takes a lot of training. And so right now they estimate that 80% of our air traffic controllers are still what we call newbies. So do you understand why we're having problems now? You take a look at what's going on with currently Homeland Security, TSA. We can't fund border. Yes, we were able to get money in for the ICE because that was under the big, beautiful bill. But before the president issued his executive order on pay, and remember that executive order was just for TSA. Border Patrol still not being funded. Coast Guard, others. These are the matters of national security. They protect our borders. And yet they're having to quit because imagine, this is what I tell folks, John. Imagine the stress of the job, period. Law enforcement, whether you're border, Coast Guard, ICE, TSA, federal agent, local, sheriff, whatever. And you have to wonder every day, is this my last day? Could I lose? Because you remember the job, part of the job descriptions, you could very easily lose your job. You're willing to put your life on the line to protect others. And then you're having to worry about that, and your family's having to worry about that. Then halfway through the day, you get a call from your spouse saying, oh, power company just called, said if we don't pay by 5, you're going to come home and be in the dark. Now, it's not your fault. You are working 70, 80 hours a week trying to make sure the bills are paid, but the government won't pay you. And you, unfortunately, in this situation, you say, well, just leave. More complicated than just saying, I'm going to take a 2-week vacation and go work at McDonald's so I can help pay the bills. Doesn't work that way. You're basically being held hostage. So now you add that additional stress onto an already stressful situation, job you've got to begin with. What message are we sending to our young people, John? Why would anybody want to be a cop if that's the way they're treated? Why would anybody want to be involved? And it gets back to what I just said a minute ago. Who's responsible? Congress is the one that's responsible for the budget, not the president. Congress. And so if they have been that inept and unable to do their basic job, which is to provide budgets yearly and fund the government, then, if they were in the private sector, what would we do with them, John? We do what Trump says on his Apprentice show, you remember years ago. You're fired.
You're fired.
And they should be fired because they can't seem to do the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Send them packing. Don't even say thank you for your service. In fact, get lost because your service was pathetic. All right, I want to get to some other issues that kind of surround Utah. Obviously, they're national, but I want to get into the Charlie Kirk. A number of things happened over since we last talked a few weeks ago. Charlie Kirk assassination. Is there any new information in that realm? And what are your thoughts about the, let's see if I can find the article real quickly. Let's see if I can find that. Nope, I did not have it pulled up, but basically the questions with the bullet and so there's questions on the bullet whether it actually lines up or not. So wanted your thoughts on that one.
And here's what you got. I was on a debate panel for this, and I actually, I think I don't even know that we were evenly split. I think I kind of threw it was like a fly in the ointment, shall we say. The question was raised, are you shocked? I said, I'm not shocked in the least. Here's why.
Okay, so what do we know about the bullet? So,
here's the official results: is it is inconclusive whether that bullet because it was too fragmented. Could have come from that rifle, or could have been the assassination bullet. Inconclusive. Okay. And of course, so they were saying, the one side, of course, it's inconclusive. Bullet of that velocity can become fragmented. So it doesn't surprise me that it was fragmented. Once it's fragmented, it's hard to determine. I said that depends on how you're looking at it. Because let's use the flip side language, different perspective. It is a high-powered, high-velocity bullet. Typically, a high-velocity, high-powered bullet has such thrust that unless it hits a substantial object, it doesn't fragment. It penetrates and goes right through. So you're telling me that Charlie Kirk had kryptonite, or whatever you want to call it, collarbones? That they were strong enough to fragment a bullet of that velocity? That takes a little doing if you want to buy that route. And of course, they had to agree. Well, yeah, I can see that, but the other flip side is that it was that bullet, a high velocity bullet like that, can be fragmented. I said, yeah, but finish the statement. Only if it hits an object that is impenetrable. And I promise you, Charlie Kirk was not impenetrable. So it does raise some questions. Now, what they have done is, it depends on how far you want to go down this rabbit hole, but by ruling that it is inconclusive, the evidence of a gun was found, was not found, I mean, you can go either way, is irrelevant, because whatever was found, you can't tie and prove that it was the gun from which the assassination attempt or bullet came from, because it's now been inconclusive. So what does that do for your defense? Your defense is you can't say for certainty that my client did it because we don't have the murder weapon now. We can't say conclusively that the bullet came from it. What does it do to the prosecution? Throws all that kind of stuff out. We're not here to have to defend you in a conspiracy theory. You don't think the rifle was there, or he had a picture of it. The video didn't show him when he jumped all through, etc. All that just went out the door. Who cares? It's inconclusive, so we're going to do other things to try to prove the point. I think, what it does for me personally is I have always taken this position. I'm not taking a position that as extensively as others have taken it, but I think there are still very valid questions on the shooting issue itself about, whether he was capable, whether he had the ability to hit that shot, and what weapon was used. I don't think they've been answered to this point. I still stand by that position. There are those who think it's a slam dunk case. Tyler Robertson basically almost admitted he did it. That's the end of it. Throw the book at it, be done. I think we had the same pattern back in 1963. It's called the JFK situation, and I think we should learn from that. I think their questions are not necessarily being disrespectful, but I think the questions are valid. And I think until we have appropriately done full research and gotten conclusive answers, I think we should be careful how fast we rush to judgment.
We know that there were a number of. Okay, let me ask you this: would you agree with this statement that, according that we know there were a number of people online before Charlie Kirk came to Utah saying within the LGBT community, especially trans community here in Utah, that he was going to be dead, that he's going to be dead that day. I want to say that there were direct statements that he was going to be killed at UVU. Is that correct or not?
That is correct. And let's carry it a step further. There are those who say, hey, there were planes that came from foreign countries, and landed in the area an hour, a half hour, or took off within an after. That is true. And this is all I'm saying. I'm not saying that definitely means that, there was a further involvement. What it means is I don't think any question is a stupid question. I think they should whatever questions people have, whatever doubt, all those different questions should be analyzed and answers given with substantive facts behind what those answers are. instead of being ignored. Many of those questions are just been saying, "Ah, John, that's a conspiracy theorist. We're not going to even talk about that." I think you do yourself a great disservice by automatically thinking that somebody doesn't know what they're talking about. I don't think that's the correct way to do it.
Follow up, and this is an unfair one because I didn't ask you about this. Is it fair to say that people in Charlie Kirk's closest inner circles is it fair for people to question whether people may have been involved?
Yes.
And do you think and what level of likelihood do you think, just spitballing, your guess, laying percentages, what percentage chance would you say that someone from Kirk involved in the assassination attempt?
I think there's enough evidence to show that the level of probability is high enough that it should have been thoroughly vetted, which it was not. You say, what are you talking about evidence? There are emails, text messages. Let's play both sides of the story here now, John. You took that out of context. That's not what was meant. Could be. But by just saying, no, that doesn't apply. That's stupid. Why would you even think that? Doesn't bring the facts to light. All it should come out, and if that's the case, it was taken out of context. Show me the context so I know that it was taken out of context and that it doesn't apply. When you just discount it, that doesn't look good, John. And there's enough of those out there that would cause somebody, a reasonable person, in my opinion, to say, I think I need some more information.
I remember watching within probably less than 15 minutes after the assassination, I had someone call me up and say, call me up and let me know that he had been assassinated. And I jumped on Twitter and saw the video of the blood spurting out of him.
Right.
And what would be this camera's side, right?
Correct.
And not 6 shot, I would have think that the blood would be going out the other way.
You're correct.
And so I've got
back to what we talked about with a bullet that velocity and that high powered with density should have went right through you, which means the blood would be exiting out the backside, not the front
side. So to me, then the next thing is, my next question is, okay, it looks like, yes, there may be a conspiracy here of more than at least one person involved in this whole thing. At the very least, post shooting and other people involved. And I do not, to this day, on the level of probability. So, when we get to the other side and God plays out the history of the world, this is one of those things that I'm going to be absolutely shocked and baffled if Tyler Robinson was the actual fatal shot killer of Charlie Kirk. Do I think it's possible that he pulled the trigger? Yes. Do I think it's possible he pulled the trigger on the rifle that we're told he pulled it on? Yes. I think it's a little less possible that it was done on that actual day, but it's still possible. But the round that we see that with the blood spurting out, that I'd find entirely improbable.
Well, and again,
I'm going to say I'm 80 to 90%. I'm 80 to 90% no.
Well, and very quickly, what we've just been talking about, that velocity bullet, had it hit a solid object, would have caused it to splinter, and a splinter would have caught that and caused the damage. Then show me the object that it hit. Obviously, I mean, it wasn't a collarbone. So what was it? Steel plate he had in there? I mean, was it something on the microphone? Show me what he hit to cause it to splinter. You can't.
The other thing is the doctor's report from Mount Hospital said that lied his body. He didn't talking about any splintering of a bullet. He said
That's
bullet
correct.
enlarged. Now, my opinion, could that mean, could the bullet have splintered? And yeah, but I think he would have said the bullet splintered. I actually think that would have been part of the
He would
it,
he would have been specific in his report. Pieces of the bullet were found,
yes,
in the following location because it's splintered.
right. So the fact that he didn't say that it splintered, I'm very high probability that no, that if he did find a bullet, which I will even say there's a high likelihood that I believe he did find a bullet underneath his skin. Not means to me that's not the same bullet that they're talking that was splintered. All right.
That's correct.
Um, I think we've covered this in enough other shows, but it's new information and I wanted to get your take on it. So I want to get into now at 4:39 Utah time, 6:39 or 6:40 now Eastern time. Definitely before 8 o'clock. I want to talk about Iran. We will definitely get into that, but I want to get into a few more things. I want to get into Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi stepping down, Todd Blanche now kind of taking over for the moment for Pam Bondi. One thing that I've heard through a number of outlets that Todd Blanche was the one that was most shutting down Epstein. And
You mean blocking Epstein?
blocking the Epstein releases. So want to get hit. So Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, Dan Bongino stepping down, Cash Patel, do you think he's going to wind up stepping down? I haven't heard a bunch about him, but yeah, your thoughts on those individuals right at the moment.
Well, let's work our way backwards and try to untangle some of this mess. First issue is the president said during his campaign, we would hold people accountable. And to hold people accountable, we would obviously investigate and determine where the violations of the law occurred, what the penalties were, and how we move forward. We did charge Pam Bondi to do that from the AG's office, and she brought on, with the president's approval, Todd Blanche. Now let's take a look real quickly as to what would have happened in that situation. Most people don't know whether they realize this or not, but Pam was a Democrat for quite some time before she switched Republican, just before she ran for AG in Florida. Todd has been a Democrat since up until 2024. That having been said, you say, is that bad? Good? No. What I'm saying, the reason why I'm mentioning that is because you have to understand that when you're in politics, and remember, these positions are political. That's why they're appointed by the president. When you are appointed by a position, it's not based on how much experience you have or what job performance you have. It's politics. Let's just be honest. When you get to a level where you're noticed politically for positions such as this, that means you know a lot of people, John. That means you've done a lot of favors for a lot of people. People have done a lot of favors for you. And so when you get in such a position, and if a person that is on that list knows you or knows people that know you, what's the first thing that they do? I need you to help me out in this situation. Well, you did something wrong. I'm not going to just turn my head. No, I'm not asking you to forgive me or not get it done, but it doesn't have to be the first thing you do now, does it? You can investigate it, and then before you know it, if so much else is going on, it gets forgotten about for a while and the statute of limitations run out. That happens all the time. President began to see that we were doing that with the Epstein file. A lot of names were coming out, nothing being done. So he told Pam, enough talk. I either need action or you're going to move aside. Then on top of that, when we began to find out that the Justice Department with the AG's office were communicating with some of the people that were being looked at, being investigated, Eric Stilwell and others. That just kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back. And the president said, that's enough. You're not delivering. You're actually working against me. It's over. Now, somebody asked me, I was just on a national review earlier today. So is Todd going to be the next AG? Is he going to be any better? I said, well, the president's position is not going to change. Either you perform, you're not going to be considered. So we're fixing to find out. Does Todd want to carry on the legacy of dragging feet? Help us say, hey, John, I'm not going to get you off the hook, but you're not going to be a priority. And, there's only 2 more years left in this administration. You can ride it out. Or is he going to pursue it with vigor that the president wants? Obviously, if he doesn't do that and does it very quick, because the president knows that time is of the essence, you'll be seeing other people that will be nominated for the position of Attorney General.
What about the former AG of Missouri?
He's good. You'll notice he wasn't put in the front, though.
Yes.
What I am hinting at is, folks, politics is nasty. Let's just be honest. It's a very disgusting game, very dirty game. And people that have done things, help people, get greater consideration than people who have principle and value. And this president is trying to change that, but understand that you're talking about 100 years worth of precedent. A lot of people stuck in an organization who came in the wrong way, and you're kind of swimming upstream against them all. It's a tough road to hoe.
Okay. Let's talk about the paid activists that we're seeing in the streets, the No Kings protests. Now, not much. We haven't heard a lot since then. I'm actually surprised we haven't seen more. But we've got, and then the activist judges who are trying to shut down, especially the of these illegal immigrants, especially violent illegal immigrants. I mean, it's to me, it's just like it should be a slam dunk. So No Kings protests. Who was paying the bill for that? Because I don't. While some of it was organic, I know all of it was not organic.
No,
your thoughts?
not in the least. In fact, let me very quickly explain to our listeners how all this works. You had people initially, when I'm talking about initially, I'm talking about decades ago, that decided they wanted to change and destroy America from within. And so they took some of their initial dollars. We're talking about Soros, Rothschilds, and others who are exceptionally wealthy. They took a little bit of their money to begin with, and they set up, here's what they did. They bought politicians. They funded your campaign. They funded my campaign, etc. Once they got people in place, then they said, okay, now here's what we want to do. We want to create distress in the streets. We want to get prosecutors that'll let people out of crime. And so they went to Congress, the people they helped elect, and said, I need you to put together programs to help get these funded. They did. They called NGOs. It's interesting that Congress says instead of, okay, I think it's a great idea, I'm going to give the money directly to John. It doesn't work that way. They created NGO. Why do they create NGO? Because they can manipulate the NGO. And instead of giving John $100, they give you $100 million. Why do they give you so much? Because that's what it takes to pay everybody off continuously. And so they set all these programs up. So now the answer to your question, I'll give you the long about answer is Soros and those are not paying for it anymore. You and I are. Our tax dollars are paying for the organization of No Kings rallies. Our tax dollars are paying for Antifa. Our tax dollars are paying for Black Lives Matter. Now, here's what's interesting. You say, how come I haven't heard as much about it as I'd like to? You have people that are smart. Gene Spiro. You remember Judge Jeannie. who is now the U.S. Attorney for the District of D.C. She is moving forward on putting together RICO to go after those who have used tax dollars to fund seditious activity against the U.S. government. And now that they know they're being investigated, now suddenly everybody's deciding, oops, I better not give you any money this time around, John. We better wait till things calm down a little bit. So that's why it's taken a little bit of a burner, but they've still broken the law and they still need to be held accountable for it.
While I don't want to call them terrorists, I would be happy to see a RICO case brought against the Soros group and
They are domestic
other.
terrorists.
Pardon me?
They are domestic terrorists. They're doing what they can to destroy America from within.
I would completely agree with that statement. Like
And
I said,
they need to be held accountable for it, whether it's RICO, whether it's anywhere else. They need to be held accountable, and they don't need to be. This gets back to a debate you and I have had on a show for some time. This is what I've been telling the administration. When you have a corrupt judicial system, which we do, you say, why would you make a statement? That's not my statement. Chuck Schumer said from the Senate floor, we confirmed 292 activists. Those are his words. Activist judges, this is talk about during Biden's term, that we are now activating to do everything necessary that they can to oppose this administration. Payback is hell. That's his words, okay? So we know that our judicial system is corrupt. How do you think you're going to get convictions, indictments from a corrupt judicial system where you have activist judges and where you have paid or bought politicians and you have members of the executive branch who are also in on the payoffs, who are providing information to law enforcement and cover? You're not. And so that's why I have taken the position all along that if we're going to bring this, and when I say if we don't, we will end up being collapsing. The country will end up falling from within. Our only hope now is at this stage is military tribunals. If somebody gets all upset with me, that's not our judicial. I never said change the judicial system. I said start with military tribunals. Let me tell you from my years of experience in law enforcement. Criminals may hang together, but when it comes time to protecting their hide, they'll sell you out in a heartbeat, okay? So once you start with just a few military tribunals, you don't have to have military tribunals for life. Just a few. Once you start, make sure that you've got those military tribunals directed at our judicial system as well, okay? Because it's corrupt. And we start cleaning it up. After that, we can go back to the system the way it's supposed to be and have it a pure system and a righteous and a just system, and everything will be fine. But you got to do something to break the mold. Because right now, I ask this question everywhere I go, all across the country, and all the speeches that we give. Tell me one indictment that's of significance that you've seen happen in the last, 14 months now we've been in office? 15 months? Something along those lines? Give me one. I'm not blaming Donald Trump. It's the system. And he appoints people who are supposed to help him break the system, who in all reality say, oh yeah, I'm going to help you break it. I'll break it by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. And the minute they get in, they start getting all the phone calls from all the friends. Now, we don't have to do 9 a.m. tomorrow. Can we not do 9 a.m. on Friday or on Saturday? And it just, once you start getting wrapped up, guess where we're at? Zero number of indictments have occurred 15 months. We're not going to fix the country that way, John. Military tribunals are the only way to get it done.
Do you think we can even extend that to the judiciary, going after indictments in the judiciary?
You remember, military tribunals can only be appointed by the commander-in-chief, and they can only be appointed for certain aspects. I can't put a military tribunal together because you jaywalk, Jay. John, I can't do that. But what I can do is put a military tribunal together for matters of national security. Now, I can get a number of high-profile cases that deal with national security where there is improper judicial behavior and obstruction of justice, and I can appoint him for that. And as I told you, I don't want to appoint him for every case in America. I just want to appoint a few cases from the executive branch, a few from the judicial, and a few from the legislative, people that have taken bribes, etc. Let them be heard and move forward with a military tribunal, and I promise you that they will rat on each other so fast from that point on, I'll just shift it back over to where it belongs, in the judicial system. And we'll go from there after we deal with holding the people that we've initially started accountable. Because once people start seeing accountability, you'd be amazed, they sing like a bird.
Two more topics that I want to hit, and I'm going to bring kind of two topics together. There was a news article from the Gateway Pundit, and this is the headline: Female anchor baby of 2 Chinese illegal aliens busted on terrorism charges while brother remains at large, parents in ICE custody. America's law on birthright citizenship are undergoing fresh scrutiny thanks to 2 anchor babies who allegedly committed a startling crime. The children of 2 illegal aliens, Chinese parents allegedly brought an explosive device to MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa last week. One of those siblings, a 27-year-old Ann Zing, has been arrested and charged for her part in the incident. Now, boy, I wish I would have, I listen to a lot of and consume a lot of news while I'm driving. And I wish I would have had the ability to chase this down. But I want to say that China has 1 million dual citizenship babies that have been born in the United States. Women from China will fly over to the United.
I think it's closer to 2 million.
Okay, so at least 1 million.
Correct.
Wow. So what happens, folks, is parents, women will fly right before they are to conceive. They will fly to the United States. They and there are this isn't just like, oh, this is just women deciding to do it on their own. No, there are what do they call them, travel agencies set up in China, China, travel agencies that are set up to fly the parents, the women, to the United States so they can give birth, and then like 4 days later fly back to China, just so the child can get birthright citizenship. Well, once they get birthrights, so once they get that citizenship, then they can work towards those parents becoming citizens.
Correct.
Well, I'm sorry, it doesn't seem like they're trying to become citizens. Frankly, I think they're destroying the country. And great, the infiltration by China scares me to death.
Well, and this is one story. We get so many. I mean, don't have time to go through them all in your show. But these were 2 illegal Chinese immigrants who came to this country, had these children. They didn't go. This is not even as well planned as what you're saying. They didn't go back and forth. They came here illegal, stayed here illegally, had their children here illegally. Their children now have U.S. citizenship. Their children, to show you how appreciative they are of being in this country, took explosive devices to a U.S. Air Force base to try to destroy it. And this is typical. You should say, "Oh, I'm gonna get people." Yeah, you're probably gonna get some people calling you and mad at you for me making that statement on the air, John. But let me ask you this: do you really see illegal immigrants who have children, who are making sure their children understand the heritage, the history of this country, the greatness of this country, the value of them being here? Or are they telling their kids, we got to educate these dumb Americans. We got to create our own country here inside their country. That's what seems to be going on, John. Why should we tolerate that? Is there any other country in the world that would tolerate that?
No, and not the ones that are coming across illegally, or they are not doing that. The ones that are
Right.
coming
I didn't
here
say illegal.
legally, I
I
I
said
know.
illegal.
Yeah, you said illegal, and I want to back this point up. I have a number of people in my orbit, very close to me, very, very, very close to me, who have come here legally, who've gone through the path to become legal citizens, or are right now have their green cards looking to become legal citizens. They have one of them, a group of them came from Argentina. They spent 20 years trying to come to America. They sold their home in Argentina and all their possessions so they could move to the United States and so they could have some money so they could work on the legal pathway that costs a significant chunk of money to become American citizens. Now they're here working and contributing greatly to the United States. That I know of, none of them are are getting public assistance the way that it used to. So back in the 70s, my I have another close person to me, whose father was a a Vietnamese captain who came here. He was sponsored by an American family. That American family was responsible for his medical bills and all things there, all of those things. They were responsible for taking care of an American, a Vietnamese captain who had to leave the country after Saigon fell. I mean, that's when he left. He had to leave then, or he would have been killed. And a number of his family members and fellow officers were killed. And it was like, I got to go. I have some, like, I think 3 or 4, like great, 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 great grandparents who came here um, from across the pond, as it were. When they arrived, they didn't show up and say, "Hey, I want to be put on your healthcare system. I want to get public housing, in these very nice hotels, and I expect you to be, paying for my housing and giving me a stipend every month." No, they showed up. They came through, and that this is what happened at Ellis Island. They came in. You had to pay your way to be here. You didn't get money from the government. And that's another big problem that we have. We need to get rid of, unless you're an American. I loved what President Trump did. If you are not for, if you stand with me, if you believe that the American public should come before illegals.
And notice that
None
they
of
wouldn't
the
do it.
Democrats stood. None of them
Yeah.
stood. They want to get paid.
That speaks volumes, John.
The Democrat leadership. Now, I've got my problems with the Republicans. I've even got some problems with Trump. But my problems with the Democrats are much more. They will do everything they can to get rid of the American citizen and destroying our Western culture. Sorry, I went on a long time. Your thoughts?
Well, the frustrating thing is this, John. I mean, we identified just one small segment, and as I told you before, we are in an epic battle to determine the survivability of America, whether it's principled or whether we collapse it and know ourselves. And their attacks are relentless. You just identified one area. I don't know of any other country that would allow illegals to come in to try to take from the taxpayers whatever they felt like they wanted, they were entitled to, would allow them to criticize and try to downgrade the government in a public forum, in a public. I mean, here's the point. Very simple, John. You don't want to be in this country. This is one of the few countries in the world where you don't have to be. You can leave at any point in time. If it's as bad as you think it is, then get out. But that's not their purpose. Their purpose is to destroy it because they don't want anybody to have the freedoms and the liberties that this country enjoys and possesses. And so, whether it's the policy you talked about, anything they can do that would help bring about the destruction of it, they want to implement. They don't want you to bar illegal immigration. They want it because it helps destroy this country. Talking about, we're fixing to go into it about Iran. Anything, they don't want anything positive. Anything that happens by this administration, they want it to be perceived as negative. And why is that? I get asked this question every single day on every show I'm on. And it's very simple. They have perfected the art, I use these words very loosely, if you'll notice, of setting up programs within our government that they can manipulate and make themselves filthy rich off of our tax dollars, stay in power, not just to be able to keep the money coming, but to be able to block you if you decide, well, that's my money. How come you get to steal it? I'd like us to look into that. They want the ability to shut down any criticism of anything they do. You say, well, we can't sustain that. They know that. But in their mind, I'm not worried about the next generation. I'm only worried about me. I'm going to sustain it long enough to where I've got plenty in offshore accounts. And I won't worry about what happens from that point on. That's where they're at. That is why they fight so hard. That is why, just like we're going and talk about what's going on with Iran tonight, I understand I was just notified that it appears that we're going to try to agree to a ceasefire instead of pounding like we have been saying. You say, is that we'll talk about it more in the show, but real quickly, is that the appropriate thing to do? He was forced into that position, quite frankly. Why? Because what have people been saying all day? You're going to pound on innocent people. You're going to cut off their electricity. That's a violation of international law. That's a war crime. Bring in the 25th Amendment. Let's do this. And just, but all that, we'll talk about it as we continue the show. All that's a bunch of bunk, but it doesn't make any difference. The difference is they're so afraid that this administration could literally actually, if not drain the swamp, lower it enough to where other people can come behind him and continue to pull the plug, that they will do whatever's necessary to degrade, diminish, lie, whatever they need to do, to put enough pressure on to cause policies to be changed, to pacify people. And that's a disappointment. It really is. And you say, are you disappointed with the president? I understand why the president is going to look now at doing extend a little more time and doing a ceasefire because of all the crap he's catching. But in all honesty, we cannot allow terrorist countries and people who have one purpose in mind: we are the great Satan, and we need to be destroyed, to not be dealt with harshly in terms of making sure that those administrations are gone, especially when their own people don't support those kind of administrations. But once again, we're doing it to ourselves, John. Just like you asked the question, who's funding No King? We're doing it to ourselves. We've allowed them to so manipulate a system that you and I are paying for our own demise, and that's what we have to break.
Last point domestically that I want to hit is something that I've been very concerned about was sleeper cells in the United States. Has there been any progress made? How many sleeper cells do we estimate that are in the United States? I believe it's more than the tens. Is it in the hundreds? Is it more than in the hundreds?
I'll give you that exact figure. When I was on your show 2 years ago, we had over 100 sleeper cells in the country. Now, as of today, we have over 1,000 in 2 years.
Over 1,000 sleeper cells.
That is correct.
2
Now,
years,
somebody
10%,
asked me,
10 times
how in
increase.
the world could you go that fast? Let me explain to you very quickly how the situation and how the criteria, the judging work. When I told you 102 years ago, those were international terrorists we'd identified that had created sleeper cells. Since then, here's what's happened. You have your international terrorists, you have your cartels, drug cartels, you have your human sex traffickers, you have your leftist nuts, shall we say, your transgender, your LGBT. Basically, we've expanded the criteria. You hate America? Oh man, you get to be part of the club now. That's how we've gotten so many more that have now grown from 100 to over 1,000 because we've expanded the definition. But yes, there are over 1,000 domestic terrorist cells, sleeper cells within the United States.
Those domestic terrorists, do you think that they would actually kill other citizens?
Yeah. You say, why did I kind of chuckle a little bit? Let's not even deal with the foreign terrorists who that's why I'm here, is to create havoc and destroy. Let's take a look at the sweet white women wives that are just out there protecting these poor illegal immigrants that are just trying to make a better life for themselves. And tell me, when you watch those rallies and you see that kind of venom, tell me they're not capable of harming somebody. Because I'll tell you, I got a bridge to sell you in the middle of the ocean, if that's the case.
Well, folks, real quickly, I want to mention you are watching KMMU Main Street Media Utah. You can go to our website, kmmu.org or mainstreetmediautah.org or .com, sorry. But go to kmmu.org. It's the easiest one to remember. And at the top of that page, you can click on our links for not both, but for Twitter, for YouTube, as well as Rumble. Like and subscribe our pages. People, please go to investusa.org. Go to Michael Lett's organization and go to, let me do this real quickly. I'm going to pull up. Michael has two Twitter pages, one for Invest USA, that's at Invest USA, that's INVEST USA.org, or Michael Letts has his own, which is Michael Letts, and that's 2 T's in Letts US, and that's how you can find out more information. So please go to and our website, or our not website, rather our X location is at Media Utah or Main Street Media Utah. Either one of those will take you to us. Please like and subscribe, follow us there. We would appreciate that. It helps us get out these great shows that we're doing. All right, so Michael, let's start getting into the international information. So I'm glad to hear that, what you just shared. That's awesome that that is occurring. But also, I was going to mention, I found the one about the ballistic. Uh, so, breaking news: President Trump announced double-sided ceasefire, agrees to suspend Iran bombing for 2 weeks after speaking with Pakistan PM. That's fantastic news. A little bit earlier today, let's see. Vice President J.D. Vance says ongoing war with Iran is going to conclude very shortly. I'm going to tell you, I'm glad to hear this. I'm glad that we are closing down, or that it looks like we're maybe not closing down, but it looks like that we are getting to the point where this conflict can be coming to an end. I am a little bit, I'm more in the I wanted to see this come to an end, than I am seeing it. Yeah, I'm definitely not in the seeing it continue camp, but um, I think it's great news, because one of the questions that I had for you is, what happens at 8 p.m. To Iran? Donald Trump has not been that far off from, when he gives a time frame, he normally makes it happen. If not sooner, something happens to the other
We were
side.
prepared, and quite frankly, where we would have been is we would have started with crucial infrastructure and gone after infrastructure that had military application as well. And there would have been collateral damage, I'm sure, for those that would have suffered because of being on the same grid as a military industry. But we would have lived up to what we said. Now, what I was cautioning is I was not thinking that we would need to go in and within 2 hours wipe off an entire country off the map. But I think we did need to show resolve that we meant what we said. Now, we had talked and we knew that Pakistan was diligently working behind the scenes. You saw Iran, Iran just runs its mouth. Iran had come out earlier today. We're not interested in any ceasefire. We're not doing anything. We want to carry the war along, which is why you heard the president fire back. But what is not being reported is the fragmented leadership that's left is diminishing very quickly. And there is a movement among the people to rise up and take over their government. And we would like that to occur sooner rather than later. And most importantly, we'd like it to occur with minimal bloodshed. And, we are making commitments, I know, that we will not only support the Iranian people, but we will support them in critical element if necessary, including what you saw, the rescue of the downed pilot. How was that a success? We can go into the whole story, but one of the key aspects that made that as successful as it was that you haven't seen previous administrations do is we made full commitment of everything we had, including should there become a need for bringing in air support. And we did it and had to bring it in substantially, otherwise it would not have turned out the way it was. That offer should be being made to the same thing to the dissidents of the Iranian people, especially if they decide to take back their own country.
Well, I want to say that it was there were two planes that had downed pilots, right? There was one a week or two ago, and you had A-10s go in and do ground support and get an A-10 was hit, and had to fly. The pilot flew to Kuwait, if I remember correctly, and ejected over Kuwait. And then you had obviously the F-15E that was shot down, and I'm assuming we're gonna have a movie made out of that. It kind of sounds like the question is which studio is going to get their opportunity to get a hold of that. In the next 5 to 7 years, I'm assuming we're going to be seeing a movie out of that operation. So one of my concerns, though, has been how much information was shared about how the evasion that was done and how the pilot went about evading by President Trump himself. I'm like, President Trump. Now,
Well, it
maybe everybody knows what people do to evade. I don't know, but your thoughts?
No, everybody does it. What this situation was unique for a number of reasons. First of all, you had an administration that was willing to give the order, do what's necessary, take whatever you need, you got, which empowered us then to be able to say, here's how an operation is supposed to work, politics aside. We go in and we find out where we're at, where he's at. We establish a forward operating base. We bring in extra supplies, extra equipment, and extra ammunition should we become engaged. we did that, and you'll find out that was critical in making this a successful operation. And the second thing that was unique in this situation is that we engaged the CIA. Now, we've always engaged the CIA in the past, but never to this extent. This time, the CIA had to go in and say, because they had a strong suspicion of where he was at as well. And so the CIA had to go in through back channels and create multiple locations where he, quote unquote, was at. But we couldn't just actually plant the information, we had to validate the information. So this is where the president had given full authority. We used over 150 planes, 152, as I recall, to pull off this operation. You say, what in the world? Because all the different locations where he was, quote unquote, at, you couldn't just say that. You had to send a whole contingency of armament, air A-10s, F-15s, F-16s, F-35s, scouting as if they were there to secure the area. You had to bring in, rescue helicopters, rescue to make them think, yeah, it looks like that is where they would put all this manpower there if he wasn't there. Quick shift, move over to follow where they're going, to where we finally got the enough time, enough seal to go in. He had climbed to 7,000 feet, and he'd gotten into a cave, and he'd activated his beacon at 7,000 feet. He was substantially injured, by the way. He was bleeding pretty bad. It's amazing he survived. But that having been said, we located him, got him out, put him to the forward operating base, got him in a location, got him out of there, packed up, ready to move out. And guess what happened? Plane sunk down in the sea, in the sand. Couldn't get a C-130 out. So we had to establish a defensive perimeter. They were on the way. They knew we were there. And it was one hell of a firefight. And you had to have the air support, which the president authorized. He wasn't trying to trim the budget. And we brought in air support, and it just pounded away until we were able to bring in other planes, lighten the load, destroy that plane because you didn't want the technology left behind, and get everybody out safely. And the great part about it, what a great Easter present, John. Not a single American soldier was even wounded. But we did substantial casualties to the Revolutionary Guard and the militia that were attempting to come in and either capture the pilot first, which they saw they couldn't do, or put a hurting on us to be able to say it cost us severely to be able to get him out. Both of those failed. Clear message sent to Iran. We can go in anywhere we want into that country and hold an objective as long as we think it is necessary. So you better think about that long and hard. Point being, how does that translate militarily? You got a bunker that we were not able to get a bunker buster to go down deep enough to blow up what's left of that 10%. Our intels are tracking it down. We determine it's worthy. We'll go in and take it out, boots on the ground if we have to, because we've demonstrated now we can go anywhere we want to, sustain a defensive perimeter, accomplish a mission, and leave when we're ready to leave.
Well, like I said, I think there's going to be a movie that's going to be brought out about this, and I'm very happy that both those airmen were brought home safe and without further loss of life. Praise the Lord.
I agree. The ability to shoot down that F-15, they got a lucky. Quite frankly, they got a lucky hit. They were using, some of their. Then that stockpile is just about depleted, and they were able to get one off, and they got lucky. And it took it out.
When you have 15,000 sorties flown, there's a good chance you're going to get lucky one out of 15,000.
One time.
Two out of 15,000 times, right?
Correct.
I want to hit. So what do you think would have happened had 8 p.m. hit?
Well, had 8 p.m. hit and the Pakistanians had not got, because you remember now, it was the Iranians that were saying the president was offering a ceasefire. Remember, this is not an end. This is simply a temporary ceasefire. And the president offered that. The Iranians said, heck no, we're not taking any ceasefires. We're taking an end of hostilities. You basically admit that you shouldn't have been here. You walk out the door. You leave us alone. You pay for any damages that you did while you were over here. You tell us, don't tell us ever again whether we can or can't have a nuclear weapon. We basically, and then we'll sign those terms. We won't sign a ceasefire. Now you see, the Pakistanians finally got them to say, there ain't many of y'all left. You may not be around much longer anyway. Your own people are certainly rumbling. You might go on ahead and take what you can and figure out, how to, beg. Don't think about begging for forgiveness. That ain't going to happen. But you might want to call some of your little buddies in some of the other countries that are close by and say, hey, you got an extra cottage somewhere nobody knows about? We can slip out in the middle of the night and get out of here. That may be in your best interest, which is why the president agreed to move forward. Maybe we can negotiate these things out. They'll leave. The rest of the administration will collapse. New administration will come in, one who understands to keep the people of Iran first, use its oil revenue to benefit its people, not to support terrorism. They don't need a nuclear weapon, et cetera, one that we can work with. And this will change the layout of the Middle East for generations to come. I was saying on an earlier show, John, I think I need to say this again on your show. Folks, I realize that none of us like to be inconvenienced. That's just the American nature that we are. You don't want to pay an additional 10 cents a gallon, $1 a gallon more, whatever it is, even if it's only for a day. We just don't like that. But folks, let me remind you that freedom is never free. And that sometimes we have to bear and do things collectively for the security of our country, for the future of the next generations to come, for our children, our grandchildren. We might need to be inconvenienced for a while. I can assure you that if it's moving the direction we're talking about, and there's a new regime, not only will the world be safer because terrorism will be eliminated, funding for it will be eliminated. Not only do you not have to worry about a rogue, crazy man pushing a nuclear situation and wiping out a couple million at a time, but also the price of gas will plummet, and you will see tremendous considerations happening in the energy market because we made the right decision. So we're going to be benefiting by it tremendously for generations to come, but sometimes there's a cost that you have to pay for to get that depth.
Somebody's dogs wants a little bit of attention.
How can you tell, John? And he ain't a little dog. He's 80 pounds worth of, and he's saying, look, you had my daddy long enough. I want my ears scratched, and that's where he's
at. Another thought is, with this ceasefire, I'm hoping that means shipping will at least start to increase. Major concern, it's not just the gas, it's the helium that comes out of the Middle East. It's the nitrogen that comes out of the Middle East. It's, for fertilizer, the two components for fertilizer that come out of the Middle East. Why do we care about heliums, John? Just want to blow. You can talk real high. No, talk like Mickey Mouse. No, it's because those are used for chip manufacturing. That's something that needs to be taken care of. And yes, I do care about the rest of the world. So I hope that will be part of the ceasefire, is they will start letting the international shipping go through the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, they will. That will be part of our discussions. But I will tell you something else the American people need to be aware of while we're talking here on your show, is the role that China has played in being an adversary towards us in this. China has told Iran that it will supply it with whatever missiles it needs, basically credited free of charge for down the road. Why is China so concerned with this issue? Because, out of all the main adversaries against us in the globe, China is the biggest one that doesn't have its own oil. China is dependent on others. They're dependent on Venezuela. Well, you know what happened with Venezuela. We control where that faucet goes now, and they've been cut off. So the second biggest place they get it from is Iran. They can't afford a second cutoff. So that's why they've been attempting to do everything possible. Now, here's what's interesting, and this is not coming out on mainstream media, but your listeners need to be aware of it, is that the president sent word to China, don't get in the middle of this one, back off. You would think China would say, okay, we've got enough concern with Taiwan, et cetera, et cetera. We got our own plate full. China responded today. How did they respond? We're going to almost cut off the valve of fertilizer that goes to America. You say, who cares about that? That affects our farmers tremendously. You can expect to see the price of groceries.
It's planting season, and we've got, it's the fertilizer issue. Yeah, absolutely.
So that tells you real quickly where China is at with us, with the globe, and what their interests lie. And here's why it's important for me to mention this to you. Not only do we need to finish this situation in Iran, but we as a country need to now focus all of our resources on America. Let's clean up the mess that we have. We've talked about this a number of times on your show. Let's hold people accountable, drain the swamp, deal with the corruption, and deal with the deals that we've allowed to occur that have jeopardized us with national security. China has no business owning our farmland. We have no business as a country being dependent on a foreign country for a product that if they decide to get mad, take their marbles and go home, we are deeply affected. We need to become, not isolationists, but we need to become never dependent on a foreign country that can hurt us economically or physically without having taken the precautions necessary to prevent that from ever occurring. And we have done a poor job of that in generations in the past. And it's time that we set the battle straight. We set the record straight, which is what this president is doing. You know, you had the Monroe Doctrine. Monroe Doctrine is supposed to cover the Western Hemisphere. That's why we moved into Venezuela. That's why his concern is of Greenland. You know, we're not trying to steal Greenland. Fact of the matter is, Greenland is a major point to where Russia and anybody else can come through and attack the United States. It's time that we make sure that we have protected our borders and those of our allies around us.
David Pine, who you've been on a panel discussion with, and I'm hoping we can get him on, you and him on the last
By the
Tuesday.
way, remind David. David didn't think we were going to Iran, and I said he was wrong, and I think we got that one right.
I'll let you remind him. But he was I was surprised how pro taking Greenland David Pine was. I would like to see if we could very kindly take that from Denmark, persuade the people of Iceland and say, let's take it, because there's a lot of minerals up there that we could use to help us to be independent from the rest of the world as well. You know, let's sweeten the pot for the Greenlanders to go, hey, it just totally makes sense.
People there, John. Surely we can work something out. And you
What's
know, when
that?
you come to, there's only 50,000 people that live in Greenland. So surely we can figure something out. And when it comes to, well, I don't want to offend NATO. Well, I got to tell you, I think we're fixing to offend NATO, period, because they offended us.
I'm going down that path. So I would say I leaned more towards not doing this war than doing this war with action with Iran. But the one thing that I there, especially at the beginning of the actions, I was like, if this is just Donald Trump's way to say we're going to pull out of NATO because they aren't coming to help us, I'm all for it. Now, yes, countries should be able to make their decisions on whether they're going to get involved in something or not. But how long have we been? You know, we've been spending trillions, the equivalent of trillions of dollars since the end of World War II for France, for Germany, for all of NATO, England, all of them. And for them to not, and Spain, for them not to come to our, come and help out, I think is a cop out. And we just need to say, hey, all those billions and trillions of dollars you're spending on in your own countries on your own socialist programs. Yeah, you know what? How was your Russian? Because had we not been there, the Soviet Union would have rolled into your countries. So the bottom line is, when I see when an English person from Great Britain gets uppity with me, I go, "How's speaking Sie Deutsch? How's your German?" Because my grandpappies and my great grandpappies and my great uncles made it. So twice we came over and saved your bacon.
That's exactly
so you're not
right.
speaking German. And the bottom line is NATO not backing the United States. I don't care whether you like it or not. We've given you too much of our treasure, too much of our time to take care of you and make sure that the Strait of Hormuz and other places, hey, it's time for you to build up your own militaries and start watching your own butts. That's my
I think
opinion.
you got a point well taken. I'll just do a couple quick elaborations on that. We just made it very simple with the Strait of Hormuz. Look, we get something out of there, but we don't take that much. Europe is really, it needs the oil from Iran. So since you're the one using it, why don't you send your warships to protect your oil tankers to bring it back to you? You're not bringing it to us. And the response was, well, no, you're the one that created this mess. You use your Navy to escort our oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz to get them back to Europe to help supply.
Nope.
Why should we do that? There's absolutely no reason why we should do that. And then the other thing, I was on a debate with the BBC, and of course they were trying to tangle me. Well, NATO is only defensive, so why would we be engaged? This was an offensive war against Iran. This was not defensive. We couldn't have gotten involved all we wanted to. I said, no, you're missing the whole point. Iran has exported terrorism not just to the United States, to France, to Germany, to England. How many of your citizens have died because of their exportation of terrorism? So yes, it is a defensive issue. You are defending yourself.
How many of your women have been raped?
No question.
And living in basically in slavery because you brought in those Iranian proxies to your shores.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so that is not a valid argument that, well, we're just defensive and because this is an offensive action. It was an offensive action taken for our defense because we're tired of having our people killed. And they're in the same boat. They've had plenty of theirs killed. That's why there's no excuse for them not to have joined us.
And the United States really doesn't have any reason to be fighting against Russia over Ukraine. So how about you guys take care of that all on your own too?
Exactly.
Oh no, we don't want you to pull out, and we don't want you to pull out of Ukraine. Yeah, I know you don't want us to pull out. So why don't you just, I when it comes to NATO and all of the NATO countries, you're worthless. In fact, you're more than worthless. You cost us much.
Like you said, it'll be well worth it to say, you know what, you've shown your true colors. NATO, you need to take care of yourselves. We're out of here. And our money's going with us.
Yes. Money, in many ways, we're leaving your countries, and maybe we'll even put maybe we'll do some training exercises for bombing runs on how to go about bombing some airport landing strips. No, not we don't want to get Heathrow. We don't want to get London International. No, we're just going to hit our own military bases landing strips on the way out. We're going to have some bombing. Exactly. Let's see.
Well, I think, John, one question I didn't answer that you brought up was we talked about the number of terrorist cells. We do have the intel reports. They have been activated. Iran, before we went over there, the day before we went over on Friday, asked that all their terror cells take action against the United States. And there has come out communication since then reminding their terror shells that they're supposed to be activated against the U.S. So those are valid threats against our country.
Okay, so why aren't we seeing anything?
We have upped the ante. I've always taken the position there shouldn't have been any ante to up. We should have never allowed any unidentifiable terrorist or sleeper cell to be in this country to begin with. We've allowed it for decades because we've been too scared to be offensive. It's time that we quit being scared of being offensive, and it's time that we be offensive and make sure they don't exist in this country. And if they're here, they're eliminated, which is what we're in the process of doing now, by the way. But we got a lot of we got to take out, so it's going to take a little time.
Okay, I'm gonna. There's a few points that I still want to hit before we get out of here. The 25th Amendment, Israel, how they're involved in this. We hopefully we're not going to have to cover Karg Island and boots on the ground, but I just want to get your thoughts. Do you think we actually would have gone into Karg Island, and was there anything to that? And
Yes.
what do you think would have been the results?
Well, what I was pushing for was that if we need to do something, you can't just make a threat and not do it, and that it would be a graduated introduction. We would take out specific power grids to begin with, either take them out, or my preference was that we would go in with boots on the ground, special forces, and just control certain elements of the infrastructure and let them get a taste of what it's like not to have access to it. And I think that would have done the job. Still may.
So not have access. Okay, so you're saying we would have had boots on the ground on Karg Island, or we just would have hit a bunch of their. Okay, do you think we could have withstood their reactions to that, because they've got a bunch of artillery that's ready to fire on that thing?
They do, and it would have been eliminated before we set foot on the ground.
I hope that would have been the case had it happened. I hope we don't find out. I hope we don't find out.
And like I said, let's just be fair on this show. This is a ceasefire. This is not a treaty. So there's still a lot of things that could change.
Well, I hope I hope the ceasefire turns into a treaty on our way to bringing this to an end. Okay, Alex Jones. Now, Alex Jones isn't the only one, but Alex Jones floats 25th Amendment to stop Trump and the war. Let me see if I can actually. Oh boy, I don't think I have that specific one open. Your thoughts?
This is the same Alex Jones who just last week was saying, we could be historically changing the Middle East. Gas could plummet. It could just totally change the globe for the betterment for America successful, which at the time he felt like we were what was supposed to be the success. Go in, take out its war capability, Air Force, Navy, missiles, etc. Take out its leadership. The remaining part of the leadership would collapse under the pressure from the Iranian people. You would have a new administration that was pro-free, pro-America, shall we say. And, we move forward, everybody benefits. That's what was supposed to happen. What actually happened, we did everything except for, you will recall, the Iranians rose up initially, set their government, to take down their government, and they lost 100,000 from a genocide. So they're a little bit more careful to go back out into the streets. And that's where, in replacing the government, we did not take out all of its elements. He didn't take out the junior officers who assumed command and control, not being able to communicate with each other. We took out the communication grid, but each one kind of was trying to do its own thing. It had its own little closet full of missiles, and it was shooting wherever it wanted to shoot, and it was still continuing the effort. That was what didn't work out the way we wanted to do, and that's why it drug on. That's why we were in the position that we were in.
Israel.
I think
I am not very happy at all with Israel right now.
I think even the president mentioned that. He did.
I think, yeah. And let me be more clear. I have not heard about Israel joining us in boots on the ground to protect to protect
They haven't.
their neck of the woods.
They haven't.
So my
Is-
point is, if you're not willing to protect your part of the woods, why should we even care about you?
I think a lot of people feel that way. I think the president sees that. I would tell people this. I've defended the president. You say, "Oh, you're just no." It's not lying, blind loyalty or anything. Why do I defend the president? Because we're all human. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. I think the president, as he publicly admitted, Israel kind of pressured him into, "Hey, don't do the ceasefire yet. Let's pound them some more. Let's make sure we got everything that we need." And the president probably, in retrospect, says we probably could have handled that differently. And I think he realizes that it was pressure from Netanyahu. I think it was pressure from his son-in-law, from Jared. And sometimes you got to look at people's motives. And sometimes their motives would tell you you probably don't need to be riding in that car at the same time.
Okay. Do you trust Benjamin Netanyahu?
This is what I have publicly said, because I have been criticized nationally, and I'm not. I don't mind criticism, but let me make sure it's very clear what I fix to say. We support and love the Israeli Jewish people. Governments, however, even though they're supposed to represent the people that they govern, oftentimes go wayward and represent themselves. And when a government goes wayward, that doesn't mean I have to pledge my loyalty to it.
I would say amen to that. And this is I'm going to get on my high horse, and you're the guest, so I want your thoughts on this. What is Israel? Well, that's 12 tribes, 13 tribes maybe, depending on how you want to count it. Judah, the tribe of Judah, who the Jews come from, is one tribe. Now, there were two tribes. I believe it was the tribe of Dan was kind of like taken in by them, but the Levi tribe of Levi, where Moses is from. Oh boy, the Jews would not. The Israeli Jews, Ben Shapiro would not like me saying that. But he came from the tribe of Lehi, if I remember correctly. Moses came from Lehi, or not Levi. Sorry, Levi. I apologize. I'm thinking of my city, but Levi, the tribe of Levi, and so there are other tribes as well. And then when Christ came, he said, "Those that come on, all the old is made new, done away with, and if you accept me as your king and Lord, you become part of Israel." So how much do Christians have claim to Israel? Is so they're to me it becomes very, very, there's a lot to it. And then Netanyahu calling us Rome, that's very concerning. Because what does that speak to? So
we are Netanyahu's best friend as long as we're doing what he wants us to do.
As soon as we stop doing it, we are no longer his best friend, and he can care less about us. And if it supports his best interest, I believe he will even turn on his best friend. So I have major concerns with the nation of Israel. Like you, I love the people of Israel and the Jewish people. I want them to see. I firmly believe in the Jewish homeland. I firmly believe in that. But if you're going to go out and start fights with everybody, doesn't mean I have to back you up.
I agree. Well, wholeheartedly, John.
We're pretty much towards the end. I think we've covered all the points that I really want to cover. Any last things that you want to touch on before we go?
Yes. I think there's a final thing we need to touch on. to the American people, to those that are listening. This administration has attempted to do what it promised it would do during its campaign. But one thing I think that we are all concerned about, including the president, having had these discussions, is that we have allowed too many nefarious people to go without accountability. What we have discovered is that the swamp is not only big, it's very deep. And it's been much more difficult to bring people to accountability than we realized. But I can assure you this, the thought has not been decided that, well, it just can't be done and we're going to move on. We're going to attempt to make material gains in that within the next 30 to 60 days. And the reason why that is important is I believe that the American people in the upcoming election will decide the future of this country on the basis of what they see in terms of holding people accountable. I think it's a critical pin and element. Yes, people are concerned about gas prices. Yes, they're concerned about food prices. I am. But all those things fluctuate and they will be coming down shortly. But I think the biggest thing that causes people concern is if there is truly a two-tiered justice system and there is not accountability if you're in one particular element, and there's not an awful lot of people in that element, it's a select few, then we don't have liberty at all. And people want to see that rectified. And so I think it is critical, as I've told the president before, that we have done a great job, in my opinion, of freeing many parts of the globe from tyranny. And the tyranny is corruption. That's what causes tyranny. But we have done a poor job of freeing America from tyranny, because I believe that America is probably one of the most corrupt countries in the world right now. And I think it's time that we do what we said we would do in the campaign, and that's America first. And we dedicate all of our resources, militarily, monetarily, whatever it needs to be done, to bring justice back to this country, equal justice for all. And I think that that is one of the most crucial things we can do. So I'm asking all those who are listening to do me a favor, and that is make a call to the White House. I'm sorry I don't have the number, but you can call. I mean, you can ask Alexis or whatever's on your phone. I'm sure it would dial the number for you.
Look at ChatGTP, go to Google, whatever you want to. You'll find
whatever you need to do, and call the switchboard. And just don't be nasty. Be a positive encouragement. Say, I just like to go on record that I would like to see us live up to the commitment of holding people accountable, bringing people to justice, and making sure it's equal justice for all. Let the White House know that this is the most critical issue facing our country. Let's get it done. We have already done. Don't let them lie to you. We've already done plenty of investigative work. There's more than enough files that we can start with indictments immediately. We don't have to indict the entire world. Let's just get a few started so that people can see that truly we're going to do something to make sure that there's equal justice for all. And I believe America will be great once again.
Excellent. Well, there was one thing that we didn't hit on, and that was Dan Bongino.
That's an interesting case. Dan was frustrated that we're not making the progress that was necessary to hold people accountable. But then there were a lot of those that were saying that you're the deputy director. Why didn't you do more to hold more people accountable? I think that's a sore spot with Dan. I think Dan feels like I'm one person. I did what I can do. I tried to do something. You sat back on the couch and complained. Now, you can't complain unless you're up here dirty in your hands as well. And I think he has a valid point.
I would say my response to that would be Epstein.
That's why I think he was frustrated that he feels like he was not given full information as well. I'm confident because I've been up there. I'm confident that that was the case. But could he have done more? I guess you have to weigh about how much you value your job. And I think at the end, he decided he valued his integrity more than his job. That's why he left. But I think he struggled with that for a while. And I think he struggled about, I can do more. And I think he quickly found out, nah, and they got it pretty well locked down. You have to have built a coalition and be working together, which leads to the next point you had talked about when we first started this interview. Where's Cash in on all this? Did you have a coalition, or were you trying to do it on your own? And if you're doing it on your own, then what does it say about Cash?
I'm going to say, Cash, where were you at? Where are you at? A lot of the times you're spending a lot of time in Vegas.
Yeah.
And with your country girlfriend who's suing people. We'll leave it at that. We're at the end of our 2 hours, and I've taken plenty of your time. Michael, will you please tell people how they can reach out to you, how they can find out more information about Invest USA?
I'll be happy to. Thank you for the opportunity, John. If they want to go to our website, that's investusa.org. It's a charity. There's two things I'd like you to do on that website. First of all, if you have the opportunity, make a donation to make sure our officers have the active shooter vest they need. Because quite frankly, they're being the ones that are the thin line of defense for this country, especially on American shores right now, and with the activation of terrorist cells and others. They're the ones that are responding to the incident you had in the synagogue in Michigan, which we know now have come out and said it was tied into Hezbollah. And you're going to see more of that. And so it's only right to have these people respond to these emergencies with the equipment to make sure they have a fighting chance to come home to their families. So that's the first thing I'd ask you to do. Second thing I'd ask you to do is do this. This won't cost you a dime. Next time you see a first responder, just say thank you for your willingness to serve. That's all you have to say. Why is that important? Because right now we have the lowest morale in history. And why not? Why would we not have the lowest morale? Mainstream media wants to criticize for what they do. They want to try to, tell people that they're bad, that they're not needed. Congress says we don't even need to fund them. They're having it rough. Yet if we had every cop turn in his badge and we had no more cops, I think everybody can real quickly get a picture in their mind of what that would look like. So that's where we're at there. Then the third thing I'd like to ask you to do is this. You can go MLETS. That's, my first initial and my last name, at investusa.org. Any question that you have, any concern, you feel free to send me an email. I'll be happy to respond, let you know where we're at. And tell John, thanks for making sure the truth gets out there. We appreciate you, John. You've been like a brother. You've been steadfast for this country. And God bless you for it. God bless America.
Thank you. Well, folks, this has been Talk with John with Michael Letts here on KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. Michael, once again, thanks for being here. And folks, have a wonderful week. We'll see you next Tuesday. Take care. All right, folks, this has been Talk with John. Appreciate you joining us. And Michael, thank you. Michael Letts at investusa.org and at